It's a beautiful, easygoing Tuesday morning out here in Lake City, Florida, as I'm taking this video, October the 29th, 2024. And I am working at the Columbia County Fair, now known as the Lake City Fair. And I wanted to tell the story of the scariest, I won't say the worst, but definitely the scariest breakdown I have ever had in the entire 10 years that I have been traveling up and down the southeast coast working at these fairs and festivals. I had an axle break, completely break, on this camper that I'm sitting in right now in the middle of a drive. Oh, of course, there's Dashel, who wants to join in, making his presence known. This right here is Tippy Toes. She's the one keeping me company while I'm telling this story. Okay, so to set the stage, I had just finished up with a festival called the Blessing of the Fleet down in Darien, Georgia. And that's a big celebration that kicks off the opening of the shrimp season down there. And the last day of that had fallen on Sunday, April the 7th. And so the next day, Monday, I'd finally gotten on the road a little late and driven a few hours. It had gotten dark, and I was getting tired. And the little warning light on the dash that's supposed to indicate that there's a problem with the tire pressure in one of your tires came on. But it didn't just come on. It was flashing, just blinking. So it looked kind of urgent. And so I was just like, I didn't know what that meant. So I decided to find a Cracker Barrel, because they do allow overnight parking, and just call it a night. And so I got to the Cracker Barrel and got my pressure indicator gauge and went around and checked all of the tires on my tow vehicle, and all the pressures were fine. So I got onto internet search and tried to figure out what was going on. It turns out when the light's flashing, that just means that one of the sensors, the pressure sensors in the tires, the battery on it is going dead. I didn't even know they had batteries, but apparently they do, and they last a few years, but one of them was going dead, but the tires were fine. They were completely fine. But I decided to go ahead and call it a night. And it's a good thing that I did, because the next day, which was April the 9th, and a lot of you might remember that date as being the day of the big eclipse. But for me, it was the day of the catastrophic breakdown. A few hours into the drive, going north up 95, heading back to Tennessee, I was in Beaufort, South Carolina, in the middle of nowhere, and there was this thump sound. And it was a little startling, but I'm thinking maybe it was just a road noise. Maybe I hit a dip or something. But then I started noticing that the speedometer was creeping down, and I'm pushing the gas down, and it didn't seem to matter. It's creeping down. But no other warning indicator light on the dash was coming on. The engine sounded fine. I'm just, what's going on? Somebody comes around the side of my vehicle and does the whole protesting. And I took a look in the side rearview mirror, and that's when I saw that the camper was trailing smoke. And I was like, here we go again. Let's hope this isn't anything major. Let's hope it's just a tire blowout or something like that. So I had to pull off into the breakdown lane, which was really narrow because it dropped off very suddenly, so I couldn't get over very far. And I ended up having to be so close to the side of the road that anytime a semi came by, the air pressure was rocking the entire camper and tow vehicle. But I didn't have much of a choice. I was dead in the water. I didn't want to go any further with it smoking like that. And I could see the next exit just, a few hundred yards up ahead, but I didn't want to go any further, because I was scared that if I tried towing it with whatever was going on back there any further, I was going to cause even more damage. So I got out and went around and took a look at it. It was not a tire blowout. It was a broken axle. Completely broken. And it was a brand new axle. I had just bought it 5 months before from a place called Down to Earth Trailers. Or, yeah, what was it called? Yeah, Down to Earth Trailers. Now, when I called them later, it turns out that they had gotten they're just middlemen. They'd gotten their axle from another manufacturer. They were giving me the whole runaround. But yeah, there had been some shoddy workmanship done on this replacement axle, and that's why it had broken. I didn't figure that out until later. But I had never had anything like this happen before. And at the same time, I had prayed before I started the trip. I did the whole, God, please set your angels round about this camper. Keep an eye on all of the mechanical functions of it. Get me to my destination safely. The whole deal. I did that. And so a lot of people would say, it sounds like God just kind of disregarded your prayer. And, you know, the whole where is your God spiel that a lot of non-believers like to do. But I want you to hear what happened next. All right, so I had the presence of mind to not just call tow places, but to also start looking for repair shops. That if I'm going to get something to tow this, I need to know where to tow it to. And I knew that I didn't just have to find a camper repair place because this was an axle problem. And I knew that trailer places also have many times the same axles, bearings, and tires as a camper. So a lot of them could probably fix this. So I did a search on trailer places and ended up finding one that was only a little 30-minute drive away. That when I called him, he said that he could probably fix it, but I needed to get the camper to him. It wasn't going to come out to the side of the highway and fix it there for me. So I knew where I needed to get it to. But I was having such a hard time finding something to tow it with. And as I'm calling around, the guy at the trailer place and a few of the tow truck places were like, if you've got a broken axle with a dual axle camper, you can chain up one of those axles. And you might be able to limp it on one axle or 3 tires for a few miles. And I'm just like, I don't know how to do that. And one of the tow truck guys said, well, my son is running a call close by there, and he's going to be passing you to his next call. And so I'm going to get him to pull over and take a look at it and see if there's anything he can do about getting that axle chained up. So he stopped and pulled over. And this tow truck driver that does this for a living was nervous. I could see it in his eyes. He didn't want to get close to the camper because he could see it every time that a big rig would go by. He could see it swaying. And he said that there's actually been people that have died on that road because of the drop-off on the shoulder and how close you have to be to the side of the road when you break down. And he said he's known people to have died there. And but he had an impact wrench, and so he took the tire off, and he pulls out this chain right here. Okay, so this chain. And it came with these 2 big D-rings. And so he got that around the axle and tried to find a place to hook these and was having a hard time with it. But I kind of understood what he was going for. And he wanted to get on. He didn't want to be on the side of that road any longer. So I bought this off of him. I paid him $40 for it. And he went on. And I was able to pull on down to the next exit, which wasn't that far away. I could actually see it from where I broke down. So I pulled off to the next exit, and I wanted to just keep on going. I made it to the next turn, and then somebody started tailing me, was right behind me. And I'm like, hey, I'm going like 10 miles an hour, just going around. I'm waving my arm out the window, like going around. And this person did finally come around, and when they got to my driver's window, they said, it's smoking back there. So that's when I knew that this axle wasn't cinched up high enough to keep the tire on the axle that wasn't broken from rubbing the frame. So I found a place to pull over, and I got the tire jack that I normally use for my tow vehicle out, and I jacked it way up, drained the fresh water tank to try to get some weight off of it, and then I was able to wrap this around the springs on the broken axle and cinch it up. It turned out to be just the right length for me to get it wrapped around that spring and then hook these onto a beam that was on the chassis and get it cinched up nice and tight. And that got the tire on the opposite axle off the frame where it wasn't rubbing the frame. And so I continued on for a little while, and then I saw this tire shop come up on the right side, and I was like, a little tire shop. It was this little country tire shop, but at this point it had gotten so late. I broke down at like 1 o'clock, and after all of the scrambling, it had gotten closer to around 5, 6 when these tire shops started to close. They were closing up. And they were just the regular car tire shop. They didn't do trailers, so they didn't really have what it took to fix it. But they did take a look at it. And one of them made the suggestion of blocking up the springs on the opposite axle, because the equalizer kept, making it where that tire was going up against the frame. So I was able to find this in the back of my tow vehicle. I normally use this as part of what the jack rests on. For my camper, but it turned out to be the exact right width and length to block up that spring. And you can still see the dents in it where the bolts for the U-bolt sunk into it and locked it in place. So the spring is here and then the frame is here, and that was enough to block up that spring and keep the tire from rubbing against the frame anymore. So I'm learning some stuff as I'm going along here. And this whole time, I'm calling the trailer place, and the trailer place was called Buford Trailers, Sales and Service, right? This was in South Carolina, and I'm telling him, this is happening, that's happening. I'm trying to get to you. I want to get to you before you close. I think you closed at like 6, and finally, it's getting really close to 6. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to make it to you in time before you close. And he said, listen, my repair shop is actually adjoined to my house. This is where I live. And I can hear from your situation that this is a very severe situation. You're in dire straits. I understand the severity of the situation. So just get here. Just get here, and I will be here to work on it. And so I was so relieved. I was like, okay. So I ended up getting there, I think, a little bit after 6, after he was supposed to have closed. And so I pull into this trailer shop, limping on 3 tires, with this rigged up deal on there. But you got to remember, too, when I was calling these tow truck places, the only one that actually was willing to do this, to get a flatbed out there, they wanted like $2,000, close to $2,000, just to tow it to a trailer shop only 30 minutes away. So to get it there for $40 and a block of wood felt like I had kind of beat the system, which I had. I mean, God was with me, quite literally. So I'd made it there. And when I got out of my tow vehicle, I'm like, I made it. The guy looked at me like, and you're a wreck. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had stress rub my face and had grease smudges all over my face and down my shirt. But I was so scared and panicky, I hadn't even noticed. I must have looked like a Walking Dead. Just pale and scared, panicky, smudges and everything. And he's like, you're in a safe place now. We're gonna take a look at this thing. And so this was after hours for him. He already sent his other employees home. This guy's name is Jim. I'm just going to say that. If you're ever going through Buford, South Carolina, and you need any trailer work done, I can totally recommend this guy. Such an accommodating, really nice, genuine, down-to-earth guy to do that for me and stay open late and everything. This trailer shop, this guy normally works on trailers by appointment. He knows what axles or bearings or whatever that he needs, and he can order them, and they come in the next few days. And but he does have a little bit of an inventory in the back of his shop there. So he took a look at my axle, and then went back there to his little inventory. He came back out with a big smile, and he goes, "Tell me how much you love me." And I said, "A lot." I'm hoping it looks like he's got some good news for me. And he says, I have only one straight axle, because I think most trailer axles kind of curve up near the middle, but I needed a straight axle. He said, I've got one straight axle, and it's the exact right length for what we need to fix your camper. I was like, I'm so relieved. Because here I am thinking that I'm going to have to plug up and stay at his shop, you know, and he didn't really want to do that because he had some dogs that were a little freaked out by strangers, and he just was kind of a private guy and didn't want me staying there overnight. And I said, well, you know, could I plug up and maybe stay here overnight if you need to order some parts? And he kind of gives me this side eye look like, I could let you do that for maybe one night. So he wasn't real gung-ho on that idea, but he had the axle in stock. Wow, I was so relieved. He's like, we're going to get this thing fixed here in the next few hours. And he did. He did. He actually had to call one of his employees back that welds, because he doesn't weld. And because they needed to, the support plates that go up against the springs, the little flat plates, he needed to weld those on. So he got his welder back, called him back in, and they got to jacking the camper up and pulled the old axle out. And when we got to looking at it, it turns out that when they moved the plates, they cut them off with an angle grinder and left those big angle grinder cuts in the axle, and that made a weak point, and it broke right on top of one of those weak points where the angle grinder had cut in. So these guys had some shoddy workmanship, and only 5 minutes after it was installed, it broke in the middle of a drive, in the middle of a highway. So not happy about that, but we figured out what it was, pulled it out of there, and they got to put the next one in. And so they had to actually pull the electronic assist drum brakes off the old axle and got it onto the new one, and got the bearings in there repacked. Done really well. The plates welded on. They even sprayed the welds with Rust-Oleum to make sure it was nice and sealed and not going to rust. Really professional guys. And let it back down. The camper is fixed the same day. The same day. Fixed. Now, if you think about it, if I had done this, as they say, by the book, I would have had to have called a tow truck and got it towed to a camper place that works on campers. That would have probably cost, like I said, about $2,000 for the tow. And then who knows how long these camper places would have taken to get to it. They probably would have put it in the back of the line, and I would have had to wait for parts to come in and all that. But to have I'm going to call it catastrophic breakdown, like an axle breaking, and then for circumstances to work out in a line just perfectly to have it fixed the same day. And for less than $1,000, I ended up paying $905.88 to get all that done the same day. God was with me. He was with me. So real quick, let me go back over all the things that I mean when I say all the things aligned perfectly. First off, the night before, how I had that tire pressure indicator light that was just dying battery flash and get me to stop for the night so that the breakdown didn't happen in the middle of the night. And then to have a tow truck driver that was willing to stop and help me out even though he wasn't going to get paid to tow me anywhere. And then he had a chain on him that was the exact right length that he was willing to sell, and showed me how to do that. And then once I finally got moving, I happened on a little country tire shop with a couple of guys that were willing to look at it and show me how to block up springs. And then I just happened to have the exact right block in the back of the tow vehicle, the right width and length to block up the springs. And this entire time, within a 30-minute drive of a trailer shop that was willing to stay open late and work on it. And then once I finally got there, after hours, it turns out they had the exact right axle in stock. When he normally orders parts, the exact right axle in stock to replace the broken axle. All of those things aligning perfectly to get that camper fixed for a third of the price if I had gotten it towed on the back of a flatbed and taken to a camper place. A third of the price, and on the same day. I think it's fair to say that God was with me, was very much with me, and was guiding me and helping me and teaching me. You see, the more that you get to know God, you start to realize things like being a good Christian and saying your prayers does not guarantee that bad things will not happen to you. It's kind of an immature Christian thing to even have that thought. God does promise, though, that all things will work together for good to those that love Him. That when bad things do happen to you, He's going to be there with you and He's going to guide you through it. He's going to give you answers to your problems and will work situations to your favor. And He will have you right there with Him, and you're going to learn and draw closer to Him through everything, all the trials that you go through. And He's not interested in having a bunch of immature little kid Christians that He has to hold their hand or rescue them like a damsel in distress, like a superhero. He's not interested in that. He wants to develop good, mature, adult Christians that can do things like read the Proverbs and learn principles like proactiveness and prudency and wisdom and knowledge. And yeah, that does translate into things like learning basic repairs and putting a toolbox in the back of your vehicle and having emergency numbers and buying insurance and a lot of other proactive and just wise things to do. If you think about it, He promises that He cares even about the birds of the air. Make sure that they get something to eat. But He's not going to drop worms right into their nest. He loved and promised Noah that He was going to keep him and his family safe. But that didn't stop them from needing to take a full 100 years to build an ark. That was a lot of work. That was a lot of running saws and swinging a lot of hammers, but He was right there along with them. And when He guided them into the ark and raised their family up over the destruction, and He was right there with them throughout the entire time. That's what God promises that He's going to do for us. I'm not going to keep on with this. I think you're starting to understand what I'm saying. But there you go. God is a great, big, beautiful God, and He is willing to give you however many chances that you need. Just let Him into your life. Start reading the Word, getting to know Him, and He's still there waiting on you. He still loves you. He stands at the door and knocks like a perfect gentleman. He's not going to open the door. He's not going to force His way in. He wants you to come open the door and let Him into your life. And I would encourage you to do so. So that's it for this story. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. If you have, make sure to indicate so by giving me the good old thumbs up. And leave me some comments down in the comment section. Subscribe if you haven't already. All the things. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.